Welcome to the MSDW podcast. I'm Jason Gumpert, editor at MS Dynamics World. On this episode, I welcome back Bartosz Spiech from XPLUS to talk about some of the most common challenges that Dynamics 365 finance and operations customers face related to managing testing as part of their overall solution maintenance and updates. This episode is sponsored by XPLUS, and we start the conversation by looking at why it's so common to see regression testing break down over time. Bart also introduces another approach based on smoke testing, autonomy, and observability. We talk about how emerging concepts like AI agents are reshaping the future of test automation and what organizations can do today to move beyond manual testing. All right. Well, Bart, welcome back to the podcast. Always great to talk to you. Can you maybe just give a bit of an introduction for our audience?
Hey, Jason. Big pleasure. My name is Bartosz Spiech. I'm Vice President of Products in XPLUS, company based in Poland. And for the last 10 years, I'm sitting here in Poland and going around different countries to distribute knowledge regarding test automation and building different products. Lately, last year, Microsoft acquired one of the products we've built so far. So we have some great successes and great experience to share and spread across our Dynamics community.
Yeah, I mean, your technology really entered the sort of the broadest possible D365 audience at a really key moment as Microsoft was changing a lot of the way it does licensing and user management, I guess you would say. And that's not really the focus here of today's conversation, but certainly very, very relevant to what your experience is and what you've worked on. And as you mentioned, automated testing. I mean, we'll get into that, but I think what we really want to start with is kind of understanding more about some of the ways that testing becomes hard to manage in traditional ways in the D365 context. What is the real tipping point when it comes to regression testing for a Dynamics 365 customer? How do you view that challenge?
That's a perfect question because it actually touches bases on the fact that testing in ERP systems is something still new. And typically it's a burden which goes to the users. They don't have time to do the testing. The business simply wants to focus on their day-by-day job. And you are left behind the system which is not tested. And then you ask yourself, all right, so let's make it right. Let's hire a test manager and then dedicate a person in IT department who perform or act as test manager. And then they will say, let's do regression testing. Let's do everything. And the thing is that there is always good point, a balance you have to chase. And if you're going to do too much, you will also fail. And I think it's good to outline that if your idea is to test everything, it is impossible. You can't get 100% of your system coverage, 100% of your business processes converted to the test cases, and then maintenance of over a few thousand test cases. It will be impossible for you because then you're going to have a lot of false positive results. You're going to struggle with communication to the business. Because at the end of the day, the testing should tell you if your system works well, if that's a bug, or that's a feature. So there's always a connection point with a business and you always need to ask them questions. And if you have too many questions because you have too many test cases and you don't so much feel where it went with stability, it is also a bad thing. Lack of test cases is on another scale. And yeah, you have to balance this out. And I think the tipping point, considering the fact that you have your Dynamics 365 with changes on one version, you have your ISV releases, you have your ISV modules in the application, you have your internal in-house development, and you have rollouts and plan for growth. That makes this whole foundation unstable. And you need to understand where does it go and how to approach this element.
All right. Yeah. I mean, there's a lot to consider there. What other approaches can make testing more effective from a cost and value perspective?
There is always a long-hanging fruit, like in every industry and every approach. And I think test automation has something like that. And this is called very often smoke test or sanity check. Like you would test if something works. Like at the end of the day, if you focus on core of your application, and if you're going to outline those frequently done daily tasks day by day, which are building the core, the foundation of your organization, if you're going to test them well with naturally some variations of the processes, you can get the feeling. And the test automation, actually, if you are leaning to that space, it's all about building a KPI, which is understandable. And if you have your test automation repetitive, And you should actually seek for application which will support you on that test automation journey to make your test cases repetitive, to enable you to run daily tests cases. Because if you have automation, what does it stop you from running daily tests to see some corner cases and reuse that for a couple of months and actually create that process, create that, we can say, habit where business will jump in to one place, they will see where's the stability, they will know by observing one KPI or some called a North Star, which tells me the system health stability. And then they can sleep well because, system is stable, our core business is stable. That's between 50, maybe 100 test cases at top. And that is something you can maintain easily. And I would say that is a low-hanging fruit that everybody can do. Doesn't matter if you are a small customer of D365 FSCM, if you are bigger enterprise, but again, you are able to outline the core processes you do day by day.
Yeah. Is there sort of a continuum or a spectrum between like smoke testing and then sort of full automation that really tries to handle that scale that I guess is another challenge for organizations?
True. I mean, you're kind of moving from test cases. I would actually say like the test automation that you build for smoke tests, these test cases, they need to be automized. They need to be autonomous in the sense that they don't need to get additional push to make it run. The regression testing will include more like a SIT test that you're going to do, validate something which needs more of your input. So the regression testing, it's like you would take a little bit more expensive or costful approach to do and validate more thoroughly, more intensively. Smoke test is not a superficial thing. The smoke test and sanity check, they are checking like the golden point. They hit to the spot where what you need to test, but the regression testing it's simply more detailed. It's also more complicated to run. So we need to balance out the cost versus the value you get out of the exercise you want to perform. And regression testing, naturally, that will be something you can perform once a month, maybe once a quarter, depending on the needs which are coming from your schedule, from your market.
Can we talk a little bit about what it takes to provide the right test cases? It's a challenge for the business to do that work. What's a good approach to solve it?
That's straight to the point. If you're going to take a look on the testing industry in Dynamics, you're going to notice that actually Microsoft, when they set the pace of one version, there was and there is still high expectation from customers to test. The fact is that partners are not having too big focus on test automation. They are using applications like RSAT, which are not super reusable. So they don't give you that repeatability of your test cases. You need to simply maintain a lot. Test automation is not present in budgeting. Test automation is an expectation from customer that your partner will test enough, and also expectations from customer towards Microsoft stating that we've purchased pretty expensive application and we expect that Microsoft will test. And that's actually true because they run every release few thousand test cases. So you can have that expectation and that's reasonable. But the problem is that your application might be unique in some places and the system updates might disrupt you. Even though Microsoft does testing and your partner did some best possible practice to stabilize and validate your system, at the end of the day, you as a customer, you will have to cross that river. You will need to make sure that you're going to survive with your day-by-day business because you will pay the fees and everything which comes out of the instability and downtime of your application. So the problem is that if you will think about getting test cases and partner doesn't have budget for that application, there is it's a foggy thing where the responsibilities that these projects are not happening exactly how they should. So how to approach this? How I can get my test cases ready if I don't have business available and partner doesn't have idea what to test so far, or the test case is getting outdated. So for that, unless you're going to make some big move in the organization and explain that there is a need for that, and you're going to be SME level company, which can invest in test automation as insurance, then you probably can force business to give you test cases. They will define that, or you will adjust with what you had from the implementation. But if you don't, then there is a solution called autonomy of testing, which addresses exactly that point. How does it approach, or how does it address the non-existence of test cases? It's simply by observing So how I can think about this. So if you have observability of your D365, finance and operations, and you observe the application for a month, two, or more, you are actually able to tell what users are performing. So since it's done all autonomously, because you don't have the user time, but you see what they do, you are able to propose on their actions what I should test. And that actually, it's a great revenue stream for partners because the partner can simply observe the application day by day because they need to maintain the customer's environment. In the meantime, when there is no glitch, no problem in the environment, they can do one by one, recognize and propose test cases to the business based on their day by day actions. So autonomously, without business attendance, your test cases number are growing and somebody from customer side is just signing off these test cases. We like what do we see? Let's do test. So you have better awareness of how the system is stable right now. Of course, naturally on the side you have multiple other benefits which are just going out of the observations, but for customers it means that I don't need to allocate business users time. I just need to observe my application, benefit from multiple other value added by observations, but in the same moment, you get idea of what users are doing, how they are actually using the D365 application, and then combine that into real test cases for your smoke test plan or actual regression testing.
I mean, just to be clear for our listeners, do you feel like this is a brand new approach that you've sort of introduced into the market here?
Yeah, it's only possible because there is observability. And observability in Dynamics, it's new concept. In ERP system, it is not. Dynamics, I mean, SAP has it for a long time. There's a lot of histories, different value provided, and great business case for having observability. Even the fact that observing every user in the application might sound, for some organizations, too big a deal. It actually is something which is done across the globe on big enterprise level ERP systems. And only that way you can actually get idea of how you can improve your ERP system in multiple dimensions. We'll focus naturally on test automation as today's topic of our conversation. This is something which solved the trouble. And I think having in the conversations both with customers, partners, and even with competitors, everybody is struggling with business time, and autonomy by or via observability is the solution to jump through that hurdle.
Yeah, it'll be fascinating as you get more findings on this, and I'd be really interested to know a year from now sort of what, customers are finding from some of these kinds of tools, which really are novel in terms of what they're doing compared to what testing has done in the past, right? So it's really a fascinating angle.
If you're going to take a look on customers, what they are finding, I'm going to the customer session and we talk about that. We observe everybody, every click, everything, what they do on day by day basis. But it goes, I think sometimes it flies over their head. It is like, we understand. That's cool. But then there is a reality comes to you when we analyze a specific case. Like somebody made a fraud, or there was a very complex sales order in the application with a lot of ups and downs, and it went for a few months to close that deal. But it went through, and the business asks the question, hey, how exactly it happened that this sales order was such a long process? And then I meet with the business and I show them exactly how. Exactly that you had 15 people included, that person was doing this, that person was doing that, and you're actually unpacking this complex process into that mess which was all around. You can answer the questions, why actually this cost so much for us? Why the process was such a complex one? And who's changing what data in the contract, in the lines of the sales order, in correction notes, and so forth. And then when you unpack that to the user, there's always a moment when they're going to say, oh, that is interesting. Actually, that's correct because I went from sales to trade agreement because I was changing XYZ. So the business is surprised how deep you can get to the level of details. And then if you have that awareness, what you are working with, it is natural for you that you're going to tell, oh yeah, if I have that knowledge, I can build test automation from that. Actually, I can think about security access rights because I know how users are working with my application. So I can optimize the UX. I can optimize licensing. I can do propose process optimization because, by examples, we actually show the system that users are not working in your app, in your Dynamics as it was designed, not intentionally, because the system, when it went live, it made a drift and it went sideways. So it's pretty interesting to see how much data you can get out of one singular session with business.
All right. Well, I want to change the topic slightly here and sort of bring this topic into focus with maybe a broader trend within ERP and especially at Microsoft, which is the push toward involving more agents in ERP scenarios and end-to-end processes and functional areas. Where in that constellation would you find test automation?
So it is pretty interesting. If you're going to think about how there was in the past something called Project Sophia in Dynamics. That was the first introduction to make a proposal to the market that, hey, you won't use any more UI. You're going to type, you're going to prompt your process. Then Microsoft made a lot of improvements, Copilot and so forth. And now we are in the moment where Microsoft is starting to introduce to the market the concept that the ERP system will be for multiple positions, for multiple job titles. It's going to be, again, prompt-based work where you don't interact with the actual backend, where you don't interact with the forms anymore. You just type and prompt to tell, please create me an SO for that customer, for that amount of lines, and so forth, so on and so forth, based on the communication from email, from Teams, so multiple other insights. So that's going to be totally new way how you're going to work with your ERP system. And now you're going to say, so if the agent is doing all the stuff, why do you need to test? And that's the core problem, because you need to validate if there is no regression in behavior of agent. Because the agent will propose you transaction based on your input, but you have to validate if all the statuses, if all the outcomes of the transactions, all the inventory transactions which are happening after all are accurate. Are the products combined in BOM exactly how you expected? And all the other subsequent elements which happen, did they regress? Is there any regression happening in it? So that will be a new level of testing. Simply, you will prompt simple words. So the starting steps of the test case will be as simple as typing create an SO, but in reality, then you're going to run significant amount of steps which will validate the results. So they will validate if there are all components needed happening in the background. So this is a new concept of testing. We had some good idea what to expect based on very close collaboration with Fast Track team and Microsoft day by day. And I think the proposition for agents or the expectation from both Microsoft and the customers will be that you will test the prompts you do over the chat with your agent to validate the results, to validate if there is no change on the way how the agent is used. Because someday if there will be a change in your dynamics and agents won't be able to go the same process as it was doing it for a few months, it might get derailed. And what does it mean? That all transactions after the update will impact agents and it will impact everybody in the application. So there will be, simply saying, additional need to perform smoke tests and regression testing, which is coming straight from the intention of Microsoft that we want to introduce agents into practically every place of your organization.
Yeah, I mean, it really does sound like a whole new, I guess, dimension to how people will think about, how organizations will think about testing in the future. But it also just makes me think of one of the, I guess, underlying themes of this, all the AI related, I guess, conversations right now is that so much of it really at its core needs sort of fundamental capabilities to be in place across all the competencies that go into ERP, from data and security to testing and, process and everything else. I mean, all of those elements, if they're not there, these goals around bringing agents into it are just far more perilous, I guess you would say, or much more challenging to achieve. And I think you've sort of made the case of why strong testing is going to be a component of that.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I think nobody will argue that there is a great value waiting in agents that are going to be onboarded to every organization. It's getting better with every model which is getting published. But I don't know if you've had a chance to review there was an interesting leak from Anthropic regarding their code, how it works. And on YouTube, there are a lot of explanations and they unpacked that code to simply show steps how Anthropic is thinking. And Claude, the model of Claude is, I think, one of the most powerful now. That's why we recommend very often in projects to use them. But there are so many guide rails. Like there is no cosmic, like a alien technology in it. It is a more plenty of guide rails, plenty of definitions, what not to do and what to expect to have a good outcome, that it still needs plenty of months' time to introduce real agents which are going to be more self-sufficient. We just need to wait. And there are multiple statistics saying that it is right now maybe 3% of the market which found value in agents. It is growing, but it's something you need to get prepared for. And with that being said, more data you're going to have about your environment, more data you're going to have about your user behavior, is going to be more clear for you how to design agents, where to place them, and where it's going to have sense.
Before we go, maybe to go back to let's say the organization that's really trying to move themselves forward from a much more fundamental, try to make a more fundamental step forward, I guess is the way I want to say it. They're dealing with manual testing still, or maybe they don't do proper testing at all. How can you help them get the knowledge that they need, sort of start adopting best practices to approach testing?
It depends how you would like to approach that. If you want to do this in-house and you want to rely on Microsoft and you don't want to invest in any license and you want to do it simply free of charge, you can use free available test automation software. We also provide one called Testing Lite, which is a replacement, free of charge replacement of RSAT, or you can use RSAT. Anyway, anything you're going to pick going to be good. Our intention is to simply solve the hurdles which RSAT has and provide for market some fresh breeze. But keeping that aside, testing tool, you'll pick it. The intention is that you need to understand the business. You need to understand what processes you can perform or what processes you do in Dynamics. You need to unpack that to test automation. If you have documentation about your business processes, you are in great spot. Just convert that to test cases. Select them, have somebody dedicated for maintenance of the test cases. If you don't have that, you will lose a lot of effort. So it is good to outline at the first place person who will be responsible, then decide or define where's our knowledge source. Is it documentation? Do we have time from business that they can share with us and unpack their processes? Another source. If we have partner who has some kind of documentation or anything else, BPMNs, that might be another source. If you already have some RSAT recording, you can convert them to any other test automation application or use RSAT as your repetitive test automation software. Having this whole image, naturally, Azure DevOps will be the source of truth of number of test cases. It will be the source of truth regarding the current status of the health status of the test cases and the application stability. So use ADO for gathering your test plan and executing it from pipeline or just manually from DevOps to treat this as one place where everybody communicates about the results, about the findings, and so on and so forth. Time registrations. If you will do have your test cases, if you do set up your test plan in ADO, even that small 50, 20, 50, 100 test cases in ADO regarding your application, and you're going to maintain that cycle of running at least once a month your test cases, and then build some progression report, which will tell about the system stability, you and your stakeholders, you will sleep well, and you'll be able to tell more about your business, how it evolves. And test cases, since they define how to do the business process, they can be a great baseline later on for rollouts, for growth, for understanding the business, how to perform some infrequent actions. So don't think about test automation as a cost, as an insurance. Think about it as an opportunity that can bring you more awareness about your business processes, which will, in the result, give you stability of your D365. Simple steps. Find the source of test automation, test cases, define the person who will be responsible, use ADO as a place where you build test automation, test plans, record those test cases, re-execute in a controlled cycle, and then communicate with business and stakeholders about the findings.
Bart, thank you so much for laying all of that out. It's always fascinating to hear your views on where things are at when it comes to testing and some of the other things we've talked about in the past. Really appreciate you being here today. Thanks so much.
It's a big, big pleasure. Thank you so much, Jason, and see you soon on on-site meetings. It would be great to have time to talk about our great industry, our great passion, which is Dynamics, in a couple of weeks in Porto Roche and other places.
Yeah, I look forward to seeing you out in the world. This has been another episode of the MSTW podcast. My thanks once again to Bart for joining me. And if you want more from XPLUS, They have free masterclasses. Check out the show notes for the link to learn more about those. And that's it for this episode. If you want to get in touch with me, you can send me an email, jason@msdynamicsworld.com. For all of our updates, please do follow us on LinkedIn. Until next time, this is MS Dynamics World, signing off.